So you don't get much time. So what I wanted to do for this video is to talk through what we're working with. It's just draft version. It hasn't been tested, completely tested to destruction and maybe improved, but basically this is the kind of thing we're working with, and I just thought it'd be useful to see. So just looking at the layout, we've got our layout one with our ability to select fixtures and put them in a position, color, or a beam. That's pretty standard. So the groups here, I'll let you look through them at your leisure, but they're basically groups like, for instance, the R2s and then the inside and outside and inside R2s, the deck wash, odd evens, and then there's some other all groups like the all hex pars or all R3s or all the cyc floods. So it's very simple, simplified grouping. I don't think we'll need to use anything more complicated than this in the show. In fact, a lot of the time, you'll just probably be just hitting all R2 in a position in red, whatever. So a lot of it will be all one type of fixture you'll be picking. But you can make some fine adjustments. Also, you can use the odd even button if you want to as well. So for positions, I'm not going to run through the positions, but basically there's a position, a sort of a sensibly named position. There's two stage positions. There's an in, out, up, down, and a cross position and a crowd position as well. So that would be like blinders. And they are programmed for all the fixtures. So you should be able to hit R2, hit up, hit the deck wash, hit up, hit R3. I haven't done the R3s in anything else other than the stage position at the moment. It's arguable that we probably won't be able to stretch this many positions out of where the R3s are because they basically just do front light. But we could maybe do an audience, a crowd position for them as well, so you can put colour down onto the crowd, which will work quite well. So maybe I'll add that in. Colours, very simplified colours. This is basically all we need for this kind of show. We don't really need to have lots of complex theatre tints or straws or steels or anything. You can obviously, it's possible to add other colours. I'm just trying to keep it simple for the moment, so I've taken all the complex colours away and just given us some good bright concert type colours that we can make some really good looks with on stage. Beams again are simplified, and when this is finished, should work for all fixtures. You'll notice that there's a medium and wide and tight beam angle. So obviously things like you can do the R2s in a tight spot, a medium and a wide, and that's the same for all fixtures which have zoom capability. Just for example, the deck spots have a focus. The spot 250s that are our profile spots, they actually have a focus, but they don't really have a zoom, so they don't go wide and tight. But anyway, so that's there for all the fixtures that can do them, including the deck washes. So there's three of those. There's also strobe on, strobe off. So we have a no strobe, obviously just turn the strobe off. There's a slow strobe. You can see it going between the fixtures there. There's a medium speed strobe and a fast strobe, and strobe off again. So we're keeping it simple on the beam side of things. The only other things we have in here are relating specifically to the spot 250s, the deck spot 250s, which are, I don't know if we can see them on the visualizer. Let's try and see how we can see them. Let me just locate these spots a minute just to see if we can actually see them at all. Yeah, we can see them there. What about an out position? Not kind of. There, that's quite a good position. So we can see the spot there. So the spots themselves I've put in a couple of gobos. Obviously the spots have several gobos, but I've put in the most splitty gobos, so the ones that create the best beams. So there's a sort of it's the S-shaped one, but it looks quite good in the air. You can see on the visualizer it's creating a sort of a double beam thing. And there's also this one, which is kind of more of a cone-shaped light. So it's the actual gobo is a split, almost like petals of a flower. But that makes quite a nice beam as well. The reason for using these gobos in this context is not so much that we're going to put gobos on the back wall or on the floor. It's that they're going to do pretty beams in the air. With that in mind, there's a no gobo context. Obviously, you can see no gobo is taken out. But if you put the gobo in, there's also a slow spin where it rotates the gobo slowly, and a fast spin. So you can do some beam effects with those gobos, and if you want it to stop, you can stop it by hitting stop. So that's all the palettes used in the way that we've used them in sessions. Next, looking onto the playbacks. So all of the playbacks are either intensity or there are movement and other effects. So there's a movement effects and a dimmer effects one. Also, what you can't quite see on here, and the plan is I'm going to extend the playbacks to be using the Grandmaster and the Submaster to also run intensities for some things. So probably the R3 intensity and maybe the house lights, and the crossfade master over here. At the moment, I'm probably planning on making it to be another playback, another intensity playback. The thing with these faders on the outside of the playback, so the Grand, the Sub, and the crossfade, they can be set to do different things, and they can be used in their titles, a Grandmaster or a Submaster, or a Flash Master, or various. They can be lots of different things, and the crossfade's the same. It can be lots of different things. But what we'll do is on the day we'll mark the desk up with tape as well as using the screen, so that to help people understand what each playback's doing. Particularly as sometimes when people find reading the screen above the faders, they find it difficult to kind of get in their heads what's happening. It's easier to see a piece of tape with some sort of much more clearer writing on it, or even a graphic or something. So we'll use tape on the desk in an old-fashioned method as well to mark up the different areas. What I've done here is I've split the intensities between the right-hand side of the playbacks and the left-hand side of the playbacks. They're split in kind of some sort of sensible order, in the sense that, for instance, the R2s and the deck washes and the R2s are next to each other. That's because they're next to each other in space, and you may find it useful to be able to fade those up together with one hand, so just with two fingers, or to be able to flash between them or whatever. At the other end, I've put other intensities which also relate to each other, so the deck paths and the roof paths, for example. I've put them next to each other so you can fade them up with two fingers. And the reason I've split, and I quite often do this is why I've split the intensities across between either end of the playbacks, is because then you can use two hands to balance levels. So you don't just end up using one hand or lots of fingers in one spot. You're not cramped up at one end trying to balance intensities. So I do this quite a lot. This is often how I run shows, where I have left hands doing one load of fixtures, and the right hand's doing a load of other fixtures. And then in the middle, what we've got basically some effects. So these two playbacks here are going to be effects. If I stick some intensities on, we can see what they look like. Now, there's just a movement effect on here at the moment. It's just a fast circle with speed on fader. And there's only one on this. There's only one on this playback at the moment. The other playback has dimmer effects on it. So if I just take the dimmers out a bit, and I'll just take the movement off. You can see there's fast flash, slow flash, whatever. And also we can also use it with the positions. So we can put them into a position, put them into another position, so they still continue, and that's the same for the movement effects as well. So the movement effect doesn't have a position, it just moves around in relation to the position you've set them in the first place, if that makes sense. So the movement and the dimmer effects, they don't have a starting point, they just work with whatever you're currently working with. So basically that's the layout. The layout has intensities at either end and some effects in the middle. The other thing to note here, and we'll look at it in more detail when we actually go through the show file in real life. But for instance, on this R2 playback, it obviously does the intensity, but this playback itself is actually a cue stack. So the cue stack has 3 cues. It has the R2, all R2s. It also has the next one, which is the inside ones, or the outside one, should I say. and then the next one is the inside ones. This is so that you, and then if you bump onto the cue stack again, if you hit play again, it goes back to the start and it's all of them. The reason for this is that if you want to flick between odds and evens, as we've done sometimes in sessions between two playbacks, you just bump onto the first cue and bump onto the second cue and back and forward with the play and pause buttons. And then when you want to go back to all on, they're all on. So most of the playbacks here have different things in their cue stacks. The deck wash has odds evens. The deck spot is slightly different in that because we don't do odds evens and stuff, and the deck spots are quite simple. What I've actually done is the cue stack is actually the deck spots on their own, and then there's the deck spots doing a slow movement, which in this case is a circle, and then the deck spots are back to on again, so the next one is the first cue again, and then finally there's a fast movement. This gives you the ability to do some movement with the deck spots without having to include them into the other movement playback, because they're only two fixtures and they're only so useful. If that makes sense, they haven't got there's not much they do, but you might want to move them at some point. So I've added that in. We could have just had the deck spots on, but I've added a bit of movement in there. Going with the theme of a cue stack, the pars are doing the same, so there's groups of pars. The first cue is just all the pars, and then the next two cues are ones that you can bump between them to flick between the two sets of pars, two halves of the pars. And then what will happen with the effects playbacks is that there'll be multiple effects on the cue stack. So the example at the moment is there's quite a few effects, dimmer effects on this playback. So you can choose the first one, which is basically all of the upstage or all the on-stage moving lights doing a intensity chase, if you like, an effect, which you can also have go slowly or fast. And this one is the snap version. So this is the snap version. The next one is the fade version, which of course you have speed control over as well. And then as you go through the list, there's one that just does the R2s, snap and fade. There's ones that just does the wash 250s, snap and fade. It just means that you can bump through your cue stack and decide what you want to have happen. So you can go through to like R2 fade, you can bring it in and they'll do a fade. You can fade it out and then you can bump through to all snap and then you can fire the all snap. It seems a little bit complicated, but it's mostly if you probably during one song you just stay where you want to stay and just keep bringing it back in and out. So that's it really. That's quite simple. Cyc lights, obviously we probably aren't going to use them a great deal, even if we focus them a bit better on the backing, on the black drapes. And the only other thing I haven't really talked you through at any point is what we've done is I've added some key lights. On capture, they're not very well focused. So often key light in the concert industry means kind of spotlights that you put on the musicians that aren't follow spots, but they kind of highlight the musician, and they can be used to light the musician even when you're just doing loads of bonkers lighting effects. If you want to have a bit of light, sometimes they're used for if there's camera, so the cameras can still see the person and while you're doing all your mad lighting effects. And the way that the key lights are arranged, there's basically 4 key lights. There's 1, 2, 3 across the front line, and then 1 on the drums. As I say, they're not very well focused in capture, so they'll need to focus them on the day. But basically, there's a stage right one, a stage left one, a centre one, a stage left one, and a drummer one. Now, this is controlled, the levels of these, the brightness between all of these is controlled on this little screen here. But the key thing we'll have when we're busking is we will have overall intensity control over however we set up this screen. So if I just fire this key light master what it is doing is it's controlling overall brightness, and the overall brightness is relative to whatever's happening here. So let me just give you an example. If I fade down all of the front line and just leave the drummer up. So maybe this was just, I decided maybe there's somebody just doing something and we just want to have a bit of highlight on the drummer. Then this intensity is controlled by the fader, the key light fader. So the key light fader acts on all 4 of the key lights, and then we can balance between the key lights using this window here. So let's say, for example, somebody's in the center and they're the main act, and they have support musicians, but they're the main soloist, if you like. Then this center key light is the one that we use. I say this particular capture is not, this is focused for the house rig, so it's not coming up in center, but it will do on the day. We'll focus it on the day. Again, if that seems complicated, it'll become clear as we go along. Certainly when you use it, when you start using this file for real to practice on, which we'll do with the desk, you'll get the hang of it. But yeah, so that's it really. I will see you at the next session and we'll go through this file.